Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I will react to geography in North Korea. I'm Faceless guy. Please subscribe and like the video. Subscribe for my channel and like the video. And yeah, let me get 50 subscribers. That's my next goal. 50 subscribers would be awesome. Please support me. And yeah, we can have nice, interesting, good, awesome moments hopefully together in the future. I also play video games. If you have suggestions for video games or videos I should react next to, just write it down in the comments. And yeah, let's have some fun together. Also, follow me on Twitch and Twitter if you want. Twitch, I'm sometimes live. Twitter, I'm not so much active there, but you can follow me there. And yeah. Yeah, but Twitch, please follow me there if you are interested in culture, politics, languages, anything like this, or just fun stuff. I stream there from time to time. I have not yet a schedule, maybe in the future. And yeah, we can have fun together there. Talk about my videos or political events like the war in Ukraine or other things which people have opinions about. And yeah, we can have fun together. Yeah, okay. So far so good. Now North Korea. I would like to travel to North Korea at some point in the future. So, yeah. I would like to move to Russia at some point in the future, or in another country. But Russia is one of the countries I'm most interested in the moment. And yeah, but I would definitely like to also visit North Korea at some point in the future. But now the video. Hope you enjoyed. Let's get into it.
What's the biggest difference between North and South Korea? Well, for one, I'd say watch their news broadcasts and take note on how they talk about their leaders. 조선민주주의인민공화국 친애하는 지도자 원수 김정은. As opposed to 이번 주 문재인 대통령은 중국에 방문했습니다. Yeah, that, and I think they have like this thing going on with conflict and something about a war, but yeah.
A war which is still technically going on. Not this is not for the war being good, just like the video, you know. But the war was in the 50s, I think, and there was never a peace treaty signed. So yeah, it is technically still going on. Like also in a certain way, the war between Japan and Russia. There was also never a peace treaty between Russia and Japan after World War II, so they are also technically in war. I think the conflict between South and North Korea is of course much bigger than the conflict between Japan and Russia. If we now forget the war in Ukraine at the moment, but the relations in general were okay, I think, before. But yeah, let's continue. North Korea.
It's time to learn geography.
Now! Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbs. We have reached our next set of twin countries. The first was the Congos, the last will be the Sudans. But for now, we have reached the Koreas. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure you may have heard something about North Korea in the past decade, as it's been in the news quite a bit. As you know, I'm half Korean with roots in South Korea, and not only that, but I'm also American. So basically, I'm the worst possible candidate in the eyes of a North Korean to speak about their country. I will try to remain as unbiased and neutral in my delivery, addressing as much information as objectively as possible based off of pure data and fact. 그래서 준비됐습니까? 그럼 시작!
I would also like to learn Korean at some point. I know it is possible on Duolingo, where I learn most of the languages I can speak a bit. So I will also learn Korean at some point. It looks wonderful, the language. And yeah, the one thing which is really impressive, or I liked really much and find interesting, is that into the Winter Olympics 2018, I think, was it? If I'm not mistaken. Winter Olympics 2018, Korea. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is the important thing about North and South Korea relations. Due to the state of the relations between North and South Korea, concerns were raised over the security of the Winter Olympics, especially in the wake of tension of North Korea missile and nuclear tests on September 20th of September 2017. Was something good or? Is there something I missed? I thought it would be. Moment. Sorry, the microphone is a bit in my way. I thought it would be 2018. What I meant. There was something special about this, I think. This I meant this, maybe not the real Olympics or something like this. I'm not sure about this. The ice hockey 2018 Winter Olympics. The winter tournament in ice hockey at the 2018 Winter Olympics was held in Gangneung, South Korea between 10th and 22nd of February 2018. 8 countries qualified for the tournament. 5 of them did so automatically by virtue of their ranking by the International Ice Hockey Federation. 1, South Korea, automatically qualified as host, while the 2 others took part in the qualification tournament under a special agreement with the IOC, and the IIHF. 12 North Korean players joined the host team to form a united team. They were allowed to have an expanded roster of 35, where 22 players dress for each game. 3 North Korean players were selected for each game by coach Sarah Murari. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. So this was a special event because yeah, North and South Korea players play together. This I don't know about anything else about this thing, but I've seen also videos and read an article about this, so I think this was something special. If you know something about this, then also tell me in the comments. Let's continue.
Dude, I really need to work on my Korean. I'm an embarrassment. Anyway, North Korea is sometimes referred to as the Hermit Kingdom, so there's always like a sense of mystery when it comes to what's inside. Fortunately, we have satellites and Google Earth. First of all, North Korea is located on the Korean Peninsula, connected to China's Liaoning and Jilin provinces, sandwiched between the Korea Bay and this sea, which, be careful what you call it. Koreans and Chinese prefer the name East Sea, whereas the Japanese call it the Sea of Japan. Keep in mind, there's also an incredibly short...
There's also something similar going on between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf. So either way, depending on from where you're coming from, it has different names.
17-kilometer long border with Russia at the tri-point with China. Along the border with Russia lies the Friendship Bridge, and only North Koreans and Russians are allowed to take it. With a transfer in Vladivostok, this means you could essentially go all the way to Moscow, making it one of the longest train itineraries in the world at around 9 days upon arrival. The same deal exists with China, in which there are 3 main border crossings: the Sino-Korean Friendship Bridge, the Jian-Yalu River Railway, and
there's something interesting going on here.
There are 3 main border crossings: the Sino-Korean...
Here. What is the second thing here? I mean, this is a bridge, the Friendship Bridge, the Sino-Korean Friendship Bridge, but this one, is it, because it also crosses the border, so, is this part the North Korean and this part Chinese?
Friendship Bridge, the Jian-Yalu River Railway, and the New Yalu River Bridge. Each of these bridges, though, are guarded and only let in certain government-approved arrivals that have no set schedule. The country is divided into 3 types of administrative divisions: the 9 provinces, the Tukbyeoshi or special city of Ranson, as well as the capital Pyongyang, which also acts in its own.
I have to look up something else. Let's say here from Berlin to, I don't live in Berlin. I don't tell you where I come from, but Berlin, capital of Germany. Berlin to North Korea travel. And now you can travel to North Korea. It's just fun to find out something. From Berlin to Pyongyang by train. Sure, you know. In North Korea, 3 ways to travel via and plane. It's just interesting, just for fun. Yeah, Berlin to Berlin, Germany, North Korea. See all options. So, Shenyang ist wahrscheinlich, I spoke German. Shenyang, I think, is in, China, maybe, probably. Okay. Okay, now I want, yeah, not booking.com, no. Pyongyang, North Korea. Search. Ah, okay. I think it's not so easy to travel to North Korea, but I think it's possible. Because he will mention it right now also in the video. Pyongyang has the only international airport, I think, in North Korea.
Entity. Pyongyang has the only international airport, Pyongyang Sunan International Airport, whereas the second largest city, Hamhung, and the third largest, Cheongjin, both on the east coast, also have respectively the next largest domestic airports. Now we reach the most controversial part, the border with South Korea, literally like their own brothers. This 250-kilometer long border, known as the DMZ or Demilitarized Zone, also sometimes called the 38th parallel, this line was established by the Korean Armistice Agreement to serve as a buffer zone between the two nations, giving more than a little half of the peninsula to North Korea. This means that essentially both countries claim that they are the rightful owners of the entire peninsula, or at least their government ruling systems should be the dominant ruling ideologies. At Panmunjom lies the joint security.
And there are even, he will also mention this, I think, kind of meeting rooms where both have North and South Korea, I think, have access to. I think that's a good thing, and it worked out kind of the last 50 years. So I hope they don't need to unify at some point in the future. It doesn't matter as long as they live peacefully next to each other. That's more important. That's most important, and anything else I don't care about. And that's Korean businesses. But yeah, this conference rooms or this meeting rooms, I think you can even visit with a military supervisor. He will mention this as well.
area which acts as like the only connection between North and South Korea, with neutral conference rooms. It's actually kind of like a tourist spot in which people are allowed to go in under the supervision of a military guard. On top of that, it's estimated that the country has about 8,000 to 15,000 hidden underground facilities, including underground factories, underground Air Force hangars that cut through mountains, naval ports, and artillery pieces in caves. North Korea, as we will soon find out, has quite a unique layout based heavily off of politics. Here you will find symbolism and imagery that relates to the government everywhere, even in the middle of remote farm villages. Every school and office building is required to have portraits of the late Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung on their walls. In Pyongyang, when they're not driving, they usually take the amazingly embellished underground metro system, which goes as far as 110 meters below the surface. Most foreigners that visit rarely get to see anything outside of Pyongyang. If you score a deal with the government, you might be allowed to visit Chongjin or the beaches of Wonsan or the industrial city of Hamhung. Oh, and keep in mind, since 2015, they've actually started using their own time zone, UTC plus 8:30, which makes them 30 minutes behind South Korea and Japan. Why did they do that? Because North Korea, that's why. Otherwise, this is the part where I usually mention places of interest.
I mean, why did China made one a big gigantic time zone +8, I think, for the entire country, or throughout the country would technically, if you just make it regularly over the whole Earth, have 4 time zones or something like this. I mean, it kind of makes kind of sense for China, because the majority of the population lives around the on the east side at the Pacific coast, but still, I think it's kind of, I mean, it is also not my business, so, but yeah, it does make sense from a geographically point of view.
And honestly, out of my research, almost all of them were located in Pyongyang, such as the Korean People's Study House, the Arc of Triumph, Juche Tower, Cholima Statue, the Victorious Fatherland War Museum, Manyangdae Fun Fair Amusement Park, Kumsusan Memorial Palace, Gyeongjang Stadium, the large...
I have heard that they have the largest stadium in the world already, and also this this one building in Pyongyang, this hotel, they wanted to build a gigantic hotel, I think, and I think it is not yet finished, but yeah.
Just in the world, the tallest building, Ryugyong Hotel, the ideals of North Korean workers stadium, the largest in the world, the tallest...
I meant this hotel, yeah.
Building Ryugyong Hotel, the ideals of North Korean Workers' Party monument. Otherwise, outside of Pyongyang in Myeongsan, you have the Friendship Exhibition Hall. In general, North Korea is quite different from most places you'll encounter due to the regime honoring architecture and monuments. Aside from all that though, the actual landscape has a few colorful sights to offer, which brings us to... Now, believe it or not, if you ever get the chance to see the landscape of rural North Korea, it will not disappoint you. First of all, North Korea is about 80% mountainous, with the largest ranges in the northeast being the Hamgyong and Namnim mountain chains. Now, when the two Koreas split up, the north side got the most treasured natural landmark, the highest peak on the entire Korean peninsula, Mount Paektu. Well, part of it. China kind of got 3/4 of it. Mount Paektu, with its caldera lake, known as Heaven Lake, is actually an active volcano with the last eruption happening in 1903, and it's considered a sacred spot to all Koreans. To the west of Paektu is the longest river that divides the border with China, the Amnok or Yalu River, which empties into the Bay of Korea. Nonetheless, the Taedong River is probably the most important one as it flows directly through Pyongyang. About 70% of the country is forested, about 20% is arable for farming, which employs about 1/4 of the entire population. Virtually every single crop field is under government jurisdiction as...
If someone from North Korea watches this, but I'm not sure, but or South Korea, and you know something about this, tell me what's the difference in the language between your South Korea and North Korea. So either way, North Korean can answer this probably, and South Korean as well. So yeah.
Farmers must hand over a portion or quota to the state. During the 90s, widespread flooding disasters caused famine, which killed off hundreds of thousands of people. And since then, North Korea has actually decided to quadruple their potato production in many places, replacing rice since potatoes grow much faster and easier. Speaking of which, I would argue that if you really want a taste of deep, true, non-commercialized traditional Korean cuisine, then the North Koreans probably have it a little bit more locked down better than South Korea. I'm sorry, South Korea, but it's kind of true. I mean, come on. Since when the hell was cheese ramyun a thing? And even though, admittedly, they do taste kind of good, kimchi was never originally intended to be made into a burger patty. Anyway, a traditional Korean meal will usually consist of multiple banchan, which are small seasoned side dishes placed in small dishes and bowls alongside your main plate. Typical dishes I'm sure many of you have already heard of, like bulgogi, kalbi, samgyeopsal, buchingge, bibimbap, are made in restaurants, sometimes in the homes of the elite. However, most people in North Korea don't actually eat meat that much, except on public holidays or on special occasions due to the lack of access. North Koreans are also known for having the best version of my favorite food in the world, naengmyeon, ice
Naengmyeon. I definitely have to learn Korean.
Cold starchy buckwheat noodles typically served with a half-boiled egg, thin slices of brisket, cucumber radishes topped off with the right amount of vinegar and Korean spicy mustard. If I could go to North Korea just to try their naengmyeon, I would. Watch, I'm at customs at the airport and they're like, purpose of visit? Naengmyeon. Yeah, it's probably not gonna happen. Yo, Dennis Rodman, I need you to do me a favor. Almost all oil and petroleum is imported from China from a pipeline originating in Dadong along the border. And I think that's a good transition to start discussing the people and how and why they are the way they are. Oh, 그럼 말해봐. 물론 바보 같은 미국인. And that will be discussed too.
I mean, if the United States would just not sanction them and threaten them in the way they often do, maybe they would also not, or the regime would also not test their nuclear weapons so often. And I think, when I read this correctly, 2003, North Korea also was part of signed a contract or something like this, where they, I understood it this way, that they also didn't, at this point, in the contract or something like this, they said they would not develop nuclear weapons together, I think, with Iraq and other countries, and then the United States invaded Iraq, and North Korea withdrew from the contract and officially started the nuclear weapon program. So, if the United States would not invade other countries so often and which have oil or other resources they need, and instead just focus their efforts on solving problems in the United States like homelessness and poverty and so on, they would probably maybe the situation which is right now the case would not be as severe as would not be in this kind of way severe, because North Korea would never have would not have nuclear weapons and also not need to develop nuclear weapons to protect themselves. So just a nice tip for the United States: don't stay in your own country and don't try to bring democracy to other countries like to Chile, Argentina, Nicaragua, and so many others. So, yeah, let's continue. Of course, also right now, the United States could still improve things and not. Things in the past they can't change, but they could change how they interact with other countries in the future and right now. So they can still do some change. Let's see. I don't think that they will do, but yeah, let's continue with the video.
Now, let's be honest, when you hear North Korea, immediately images of the Kim regime and marching soldiers, military personnel. But for a couple minutes, try as hard as you can to put that aside and go deeper to a level that most people in the Western world don't really tap into. What is North Korea like outside of the news? Well, first of all, the country has about 25 million people and has the most active troops per population at nearly 48 per thousand people. With the exception of a very small group of Chinese, Japanese, and Westerners that have residency status, the country is almost completely homogenous at 99.99% ethnically Korean. That was the easiest pie chart I've ever made. In addition, they also use the North Korean won as their currency, even though foreigners can't use it. They use a Type-C plug outlet, and they drive on the right side of the road. Let's quickly talk about the few non-North Koreans that are allowed to live in North Korea. The only real group of ethnic minorities that have inhabited the peninsula prior to war times would be the Jegasun people, descendants of Manchurian lay monks from China that got married and settled in the area. Otherwise, modern Chinese people known as Huaqiao have been able to establish residencies in North Korea. However, since the 80s, more have repatriated back to China. Otherwise, a very small community of only a couple hundred Indians, Japanese, and yes, even about 200 Americans live in North Korea. Some of them are prisoners of war, some are defectors, but most of these people are serving in humanitarian sectors, providing things like medical and educational aid. The country has virtually no standardized immigration policy other than, will the president allow you in? Which is how these two people got in. Remember the Equatorial Guinea episode? We talked about the dictator Francis.
I heard about this thing before. Let's see. There's also a Spanish guy who lives in North Korea and is the head of the Friendship Corporation of North Korea. So he will also mention this. So let's see.
Macias. Well, he made a deal with Kim Il-sung and sent his kids to North Korea shortly before he was assassinated. Yeah, his daughter Monique was raised alongside the regime, personally meeting Kim multiple times. She speaks fluent Korean and is alive today. She wrote a book and does speaking tours. Then you have this guy who goes by his Korean name, Chosun-il. He's the only Westerner to officially work for the regime. It took him over 10 years to gain the confidence of the government. He is head of the Korean Friendship Association and is North Korean.
So the head of the Korean Friendship Organization, I think this is the Spanish guy I meant. I think he came from Spain also. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe that's also wrong, but he's very interesting. He's kind of the ambassador to the world also. He will say this also, I think.
Korea's unofficial ambassador to the world. What's even more interesting are the North Koreans living abroad. Today there's a community of North Korean descended people in Japan known as the Zainichi Koreans. They have their own pro-Pyongyang operated schools and teach lessons in Korean with a strong pro-North Korean curriculum. In Japan. Weird, huh? Also, there's estimated to be a little more than 20,000 defectors living in South Korea. And there are quite a few living in the US as well. Remember that letter I got on Flag Friday? In North Korea, they speak, of course, Korean, but a distinct North Korean dialect, which is actually...
The language looks very awesome. I said this before, but yeah, I'm interested in hearing from you guys, people from Korea, North or South, to tell me the differences. You will also explain, I think, a bit about this, but if you have something else additionally to mention about this, please do this. I love languages.
Actually more kind of like a proper traditional way of speaking, whereas the Korean spoken in South Korea utilizes a plethora of loan words from English and to some extent Chinese. For example, in South Korea, juice is juice. In North Korea, 과일 단물, which translates to something like fruit sweet water. In South Korea, ice cream. In North Korea, 얼음 과자, which means something like ice sweet treat. It's kind of like how Icelandic and Faroese are closer to ancient Norse than Danish, Swedish, and Norwegian. Now, being a North Korean in North Korea is very different from being a citizen of most other places on Earth. First thing you have to know is juche. This word describes the ideology of North Korea started by its founder Kim Il-sung. Juche translates to something along the lines of self-reliance. What's interesting is that North Korea even goes by the juche year, not the Gregorian calendar. All the years start on Kim Il-sung's birthday, April 15th, 1912, making 2018 the year 106 for them. All resources follow the Sungun Cheongji policy, which gives ration priority to the military. They have the largest military budget per GDP in the world at nearly 23%. Both men and women are required to serve conscription.
I'm against conscription and against military, but technically, I mean, they are more progressive in this way than Germany, where only men have theoretically to serve in the military. I know the conscription thing is not active in the moment in Germany, but it could be activated anytime again. And then, for example, also I would need to go to the military. I would of course not go. I would refuse and do something else. And but yeah. Here only men theoretically have to serve, and in other countries, European countries, I think as well, but I know only about Germany. And yeah, there North Korea is ahead of us. In a certain way, I'm still against any kind of military. Although I understand why they need it, or certain countries need it, but it would be better if no one would need the military. And yeah, we should work towards a future where this is hopefully at some point possible.
And with 1.2 million active, this makes North Korea the country with the fourth largest military after China, the US, and India. In elementary school, children are taught almost immediately that the enemy is the West, and specifically the USA. One of their favorite cartoons being Squirrel and Hedgehog, anthropomorphic depictions of North Koreans versus the Japanese weasels, South Korean mice, and the American wolves. And don't forget good old Russia Bear that the squirrels used to depend on for help as an ally, but he got too drunk and so they dropped him. Now I'm pretty sure you're all aware of how much restriction there is in North Korea on everyday commodities that we in the West are accustomed to.
Stuff like YouTube and Google probably, but some of the things which are censored in North Korea are also censored in China, I think, and in Vietnam also maybe, and in other countries, maybe also Cuba, also other. I mean, I'm in favor of communism. I read about recently about the communist society on Wikipedia. I will have a link maybe in the description. So what is written about what this communist society may look like is something I would really, really like. I will read about. But I would also like this free access to kind of things like YouTube and Google, and I think this social freedoms. I think I want a society where everyone can use anything for free, like for example food, energy, shelter, so where nothing is You don't need to buy something or pay for something. You work for the society, and the society gives things for you for free in a very small thing. What I think socialism and communism is about. I will maybe make a longer video about this in the future. But the social freedoms, like that you can as a man or as a woman be together with, I mean, a man or a woman, so lesbian, gay, everyone can marry. This kind of social freedom that you can kind of, I mean, decide where you live, and how this is then distributed, kind of shelter or food or other stuff which is not available in for everyone is something else. And I can also explain to you my views on this in another video. But yeah, as much social freedoms as possible, and but everyone needs to be able to participate in any aspect of life as anyone else. My idea of communism. But let's continue with the video.
To, like YouTube. A list of things restricted in North Korea include overly provocative clothing, any website outside of North Korea's Pyongyang internet service, movies and music from the outside, Coca-Cola, anything related to or being LGBT, international travel unless you are a high-ranked official with permission from the government, domestic travel between cities unless you have a permit, magazines, hair dye, or a haircut that does not fit one of the 28 approved styles for men and women, any kind of religious literature. They did just legalize certain cell phones though. Progress! Speaking of which, North Korea is essentially an enforced atheistic state, although some would argue that it's more like a person reverence state. Although the Constitution says it allows religious freedom, religion is heavily restricted and chastised. Anyone owning a piece of religious literature, proselytizing, or worshipping anywhere outside of the government-sanctioned and heavily monitored churches will be punished severely. Numbers are...
I think you should not punish anyone for anything. And it's nothing about North Korea right now. It's just in general what I think. Maybe I'm an anarchist or a mix between anarchist and communist. But anyway, I think that's not a bad thing to have certain places like churches or other buildings or for different religions, and there you can pray. There you can there's religious symbols and so. And outside of this specified areas, no religious symbols is, I think, not such a bad idea. But then of course for every religion, to make it fair for everyone. But the idea of not having religious symbols or people doing religious stuff outside of this buildings or these areas is, I think, not such a bad idea. And for every religion, of course. So atheist, I don't think that religion should have anything to do with government. So there should not be an influence any religious group has on the government. Politics and religious should not be under one roof. But yeah, let's continue.
Are hard to come by since the Christian community is heavily concealed and underground, but studies show that there could be anywhere between 300,000 to 500,000 Christians residing in North Korea to this day. North Korea is a very elitist-run country. The top and most privileged people live in Pyongyang. Most people that live in the city are expected to excel in all fields of academia and the arts. Most people there play at least one instrument and have some kind of skill that can attribute to the furtherance of North Korea's cultural identity. And if the government feels like it, they will hold the Arirang Mass Games, the largest of its kind according to the Guinness Book of World Records. Here, students as young as 5 from one of the top 8 elite schools of Pyongyang participate in an extravagant, colorful performance of exquisitely choreographed acrobatics, arts, dance, and music with an amazing card mosaic wall, literally controlled by individual students flipping colored panels, creating a massive moving image. It's like a living TV, and each pixel is a person. Okay, history time. If we really want to go back and discuss the entire history of the Korean...
And this was also very interesting. Yeah. A bit of course difficult, and I don't think that I could do this or would be in any way good in doing this. But I would be far too afraid to fail then, and then one thing it doesn't work, and so one of these things you hold up or so. And also this kind of gigantic group things where thousands of people do the same thing, and you're just one very tiny spot of this. I'm not sure if I would like this to do this, but yeah. Let's continue history of Korea.
Korean Peninsula, it kind of goes like this. Jelmun and Mumun pottery period, Korean Neolithic period, Korean Bronze Age, Korean Iron Age. First kingdom of Gojoseon was founded along with the Jin state. The Proto Three Kingdoms period, the actual Three Kingdoms period of Goguryeo, Baekje and Shilla and Balhae split up. The latter three kingdoms, United Dynastic period of Goryeo, Joseon and Korean Empire, World War II Japanese occupation. There's a weird provisional government thing hosted in China. And then this is where things get complicated. Basically, Russia and China supported the North, and the US and the UN with its allies for the South. The Korean War, or as the North Koreans call it, the Victorious Fatherland Liberation War, was essentially a war caused by political ideology. Basically, there are arguments on who exactly shot the first fire, but what we do know is that on Sunday, June 25th, 1950, North Korea's Korean People's Army crossed the 38th parallel behind artillery fire, and in 3 months pushed South Korean and American forces all the way down to Busan. Then the US and UN forces retaliated. They pushed the North Koreans all the way back up with a vicious counterattack. Finally, there was a stalemate and armistice in 1954, and the DMZ was set up, officially separating the two Koreas. Today, North Korea is in an interesting situation. If you talk to a North Korean, they will tell you, yes, anyone disrespecting leaders will be punished. Which brings us to Kim Jong-un. I feel like we kind of have to do a flowchart like we did in the Colombia episode. Can we do that, Ken?
Sure.
It all started with this guy, Kim Il-sung, father of North Korea. Kim Il-sung had 6 children from 2 wives. His oldest son, Kim Jong-il, took over after him when he passed away in 1994. The country wept. Kim Jong-il was known for being the man that essentially, against UN policies, made North Korea a nuclear state by supposedly developing nuclear warheads. He died in 2011. The country wept again. He had 6 children from 3 different women. The oldest son was supposed to inherit the nation, but apparently Kim Jong-nam was considered an embarrassment, and he lived in exile. The next oldest son, Kim Jong-chol, was deemed as not fit for the job, so that left the youngest son, Kim Jong-un, to take over the throne. Kim Jong-un was brought to power after his father's death, and in 2013, Kim Jong-un executed his aunt's husband under grounds of alleged corruption and treason. His half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, was assassinated in Kuala Lumpur. Details are still a little shady behind it. He then continued his father's work by doing a series of missile tests on Mount Mantap. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on in North Korean politics, and it only gets more interesting when we talk about their relationship to the outside world. Let's cover that now.
I think they have kind of good relations, depending on the situation, probably to China and Russia, because they get, I think, most of the resources from China and a bit also from Russia. And maybe also kind of good relations to other more or less socialistic or communistic, not so communistic, but socialistic states like Vietnam, Laos. I'm always confused about this, Laos or Laos. China, Cuba, and Venezuela. I mean, let's see. I think they have not very good relations to France, Japan, and South Korea, because South Korea, France, and I think also the US do not recognize North Korea's independence, or that they are a country.
North Korea is known for being one of the most isolated nations on Earth. However, they do actually have diplomatic missions.
I watched really also on the you see on YouTube, you can sometimes they have a big conference of this once a year meeting in New York of all states and governors or people from all countries meet in this big UN hall, United Nations General Assembly. And I watched also there some speeches from some countries and also from North Korea, I think.
With outside states. First of all, North Korea has made kind of interesting business ties with various African nations. They are known for being
I see, I know, I remember this. This is also funny.
The creators of various statues like the ones in Zimbabwe, Namibia, Mozambique, even Senegal's Resistance Monument, the largest statue in Africa. Generally, they seem to have ties with nations that also have ties to communism or are still under communist governments. In the past, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam were pretty close allies. However, in the past, these states have adopted a more capitalistic substructure in their legislations, which has distanced them from North Korea over the years. You would think that the USA and UK would have bad ties, but surprisingly, the UK has an embassy in North Korea. North Korea actually does have third-party agreements under the table that allows private investors to do business with them. Whenever North Korea says they're closing off to the Americans, there's always kind of like a small loophole that they kind of let slide, and by that I mean Dennis Rodman. North Korea might say that their best friends would kind of technically be China and Russia. However, China and Russia are a little weary of hanging out with them. Both countries are their largest suppliers of import and export, as well as outside communication, even though that is very restricted as well. When it comes to South Korea, though, the North has kind of like a strange I love you, but I hate everything you stand for type of relationship. These two are basically identical twins, separated at birth, raised by incredibly different foster parents. North Koreans kind of view South Koreans as American puppets that condone Western imperialist ideologies. Basically, the narrative for the North Koreans is withdraw your ties and sanctions to the Americans and we can reunify, whereas the South is like get rid of Kim Jong-un and join our system and then we can unify. In conclusion, yes, North Korea has quite a reputation around the world for being a mysterious, isolated nation of enigma, brimming with controversy and conflict, but they also have a unique story that tells us how ideology can play one of, if not one of the most important roles on how we people will live on the planet. I don't know what the future will hold for North Korea and South Korea, but let's hope that somehow, someway, peace can be the final result. Stay tuned! Twin number 2, South Korea, is coming up next, and my mom will be in it!
I don't think that I should I mean, it is Korean business, so, but I still think as long as they live peacefully next to each other, it doesn't matter if they ever unify or not. It's not important. Who cares? And peace is more important than such things. And yeah, I don't care either way. But I would like it, of course, when there would be good relations between North and South Korea in the way of that they just coexist next to each other, and also good relations from North Korea to other countries in the world. So if, for example, the United States would not be so aggressive, also North Korea would probably maybe not be as aggressive as it maybe sometimes seems to look like, or is maybe even. I don't know. But yeah. I like this video very much, and I will try to one day maybe visit North Korea. I mean, I don't know if it is possible, but it would be certainly interesting. And yes, I think that's about it. I will not react next to South Korea. I will react to South Korea at some point, but not as in the next video. Maybe in the next video, I mean, Kiribati is offered to me here, but maybe I thought about maybe the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or which would also be interesting, Cuba, or Iran. But yeah, let's see. You can decide this also, kind of, if you just write something down in the comments what you would like me to react to. It must not be a Geography Now video, it can also be a different video about geography, or a different video about something else you are interested in. Yeah, follow me on Twitch, and let's have some fun. Also, if you want to see me talk more about controversy, political stuff, you can also subscribe to my second channel. A link will be as well in the description. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and like and subscribe, and we see each other again in the next video.